Imagine a day where you can simulate a world so perfectly that you can recreate every single neurosynaptic thought you could have, but now you're in the simulation on the computer.
Is reality all just one big simulation? Well, some big names like Neil deGrasse Tyson, Elon Musk, and many more think it's a very possible that we are. So let's get into it. Neil deGrasse Tyson, one of the most charismatic scientists since Bill Nye. He thinks that there's a very good chance we could be living in a simulation. In fact, he thinks it's about a 50-50 chance. All of this could be one big simulation sitting on someone's hard drive. When Tyson was asked about us possibly living in a simulation of some kind, he said, quote, "I think the likelihood may be very high." Then he noted the massive gap between human and chimpanzee intelligence despite how much DNA we share with each other. 98%, just so you know. So in the vastness of space, there could be some other beings far, far more superior to us in every conceivable way. Tyson went on to say we would be drooling, blithering idiots in their presence. If that's the case, it is easy for me to imagine that everything in our lives is just a creation of some other entity for their entertainment. A lot of the popularity about the whole "are we living in a simulation" thing came not only from the Matrix, of course, but from Nick Bostrom, a philosopher at the University of Oxford in 2003. He came out with a theory that what we perceive as reality might actually be a sophisticated computer simulation created by an advanced civilization. He based his theory on three possibilities, one of which must be true. Either human civilizations never reach a stage where they can create such simulations because they either go extinct or choose not to. Advanced civilizations are not interested in creating simulations of their ancestors' lives. And the third is that we are almost certainly living in a simulation. See, Bostrom argues that if the first two options are not true, then the third must be. Because if any advanced civilizations are capable of creating simulations and are interested in doing so, the number of simulated realities would far outnumber the one originally created. So the probability that we are living in the real world is very low. To make it simpler, think about it like this. Let's say you have one real world and millions of simulated ones. If you randomly found yourself in one of these worlds, the chances are incredibly high that you're in one of the simulations rather than the one real world. People often liken this idea to video games. Just as characters in a game might believe their world is real, Bostrom suggests that our reality could be created by beings with technology far beyond our own, and we wouldn't necessarily know it. Next up, we have Elon Musk. A man so incredibly smart, yet so incredibly dumb at the same time. It's weird. Anyway, we're not here to talk about Elon Musk himself really, but his theory on a simulated world. Let's get into that. The CEO of SpaceX and Tesla himself really believes that we are indeed living in a simulation. He's talked about this on the Joe Rogan podcast and press conferences, and unlike the other folks on this list who just theorize about it and think it could be a possibility, Musk is like 99.9% sure, stating that there's a quote 1 in a billion chance we're in base reality. So just a little less on the fence than Neil deGrasse Tyson, for example. Max Tegmark is a physicist at MIT who's written a couple papers on simulation theory, one in 2014 entitled "Is the Universe a Simulation?" and another that came out just a couple years ago called "Detecting Structures in Universe Simulations," which he wrote along with postdoctoral researcher at the University of Copenhagen, Hans Olaf Kold. Max Tegmark believes that our universe can all be broken down mathematically, and that even reality itself is part of a mathematical structure. Now, he outlined this in his 2014 book, Our Mathematical Universe. So Tegmark thinks that these mathematical structures could essentially be similar to the type of code we see used in, say, video games. A simulation. In Tegmark's own words, if I were a character in a computer game, I would also discover eventually that the rules seemed completely rigid and mathematical. Next up, we have James Gates, who spoke at the Isaac Asimov Memorial Debate along with Max Tegmark, Neil deGrasse Tyson, and others. Gates is a theoretical physicist at the University of Maryland, and he made similar discoveries as Max Tegmark did. He stated, "I was driven to error-correcting codes. They're what make browsers work." So why were they in the equations I was studying about quarks and electrons and supersymmetry? This brought me to the stark realization that I could no longer say people like Max are crazy.
Next, we are talking about the anomalies in the cosmic microwave background. So for this one, we are taking a look at the universe's oldest light. That is the cosmic microwave background, also known as the CMB. This is like the universe's baby picture taken shortly after the Big Bang. Now, this light should be pretty uniform, but scientists have noticed some weird patterns and anomalies in it. It's as if the universe has a slight glitch or a kind of a cosmic watermark showing up in this ancient glow. Some folks think these odd patterns might be like the digital artifacts you see in images that have been compressed too much, or when your video game starts showing weird lines because of a graphics bug. What's super intriguing is that these anomalies could hint at a digital grid or a kind of underlying scaffold to space-time, sort of like how pixels build up your screen. If our universe were a simulation, you might expect to see some clues at the largest scales, and these odd patterns in the CMB are like potential Easter eggs left by the universe's programmers. Next, we are talking about Gödel's incompleteness theorems. So these theorems are like the ultimate brain teasers of the math world. They tell us that if you have a robust enough system of math, the kind you could use to describe, say, the entire universe, there are always going to be some puzzles you can't solve, no matter how hard you try. It's like having a never-ending list of riddles where some just don't have an answer. Now, think about a computer simulation. Even the most powerful video game or simulation has its limits. There are certain things that it just can't compute or display. Gödel's theorems suggest something similar about our universe. There might be cosmic rules that are kind of like a computer's programming constraints. These unprovable truths could mean we're in a giant cosmic simulation where some things are set up just so the system can keep running without crashing. It's a mind-bending idea that maybe some of the mysteries in the universe are unsolvable because they're built into the code of our reality. Next, we are talking about the Bootstrap paradox, which in physics is like a cosmic chicken or the egg scenario that really twists your brain. Imagine you write a story where a scientist receives a mysterious notebook from the future filled with ideas that they then publish. Where did the original idea come from? Similarly, in physics, we have laws that could potentially explain how entire universes, including one like ours, might be created. It's as if the universe could contain the recipe for making more universes, including itself. This kind of mind-bending, self-creating loop is like a video game where characters discover they can design and spawn new levels or even new games from within the game they're already playing. It suggests our universe could be just one level in an epic cosmic game, constantly spawning new universes in a never-ending cycle. So next time you're pondering the mysteries of the cosmos, consider that maybe we're in a universe that's bootstrapping itself into existence. Next, we are talking about the black hole information paradox. Imagine you toss your favorite book into a black hole, a bit dramatic, I know. According to the rules of quantum mechanics, the information in that book should be preserved somewhere, somehow, because in the quantum world, information never really disappears. But black holes, these cosmic vacuum cleaners, seem to suck everything in and let nothing out, not even light, which makes it look like the information just vanishes from the universe. This dilemma is what scientists call the black hole information paradox. Now here's where things get really sci-fi. Some smart folks think this paradox could be a clue that we are living in a cosmic hologram. They suggest that all the information swallowed by the black hole might actually be stored on its surface, kind of like how your phone stores stuff in the cloud. I'm still trying to figure out what the cloud is. This idea is part of the holographic principle, which hints that our entire 3D universe might be a projection from a 2D boundary. This very mind-bending concept fits nicely with the simulation hypothesis, suggesting that what we experience as three-dimensional could be just another level of grand cosmic simulation. And finally on our list today, we are talking talking about tampering with the experiment. So imagine if we found out for sure that our whole life is just a massive computer game and everything we've just spoken about is in fact true. Now, that's what Professor Preston Green from Nanyang Technological University in Singapore is thinking about. He's pretty worried that if our scientists ever manage to prove that we are living in a simulation, it could cause a huge mess. So here's the deal. According to Green, if we start running experiments and suddenly figure out that yes, we are indeed a simulation, this could really mess up the whole point of why we're being simulated in the first place. Green suggests that if we get too nosy and prove that we're just bits of data in a cosmic computer, the beings running this show might just hit the off switch. Why? Well, because if we know we're in a simulation, then we'll probably change our behavior so much that the simulation stops being useful for whatever questions our creators are trying to answer about their own world. So, while it's fun and kind of weird to think about being in a giant video game, Green warns that proving it could lead to game over for all of us. So just be careful, you know? They have questions for us, buddy, I got questions for them, okay?
So we've discussed a lot of theories and stuff from scientists, but how about strange first-hand experiences? This story comes to us from Reddit user JenL729. When I was about 4 or 5 years old, my father's uncle passed away. My father was going to the wake, but my mother was working, so he needed to bring me with him. I had never been to a wake or a funeral before, and I do believe this was my first ever experience with death. We arrived at the funeral home and I followed him through the procession of family members. Then we approached the open casket. I don't recall being afraid. Curious and bewildered would be better terms to describe the feelings, I think. I do know that there was absolutely no sense of fear at that point. We stepped away from the casket and I stood by my father as he chatted with family members. I needed to use the restroom, and it was just around the corner, so he told me to go and come right back. I turned to the corner, used the restroom/sink, then exited the bathroom. When I came out and turned the corner, the room was empty and there was no casket. My father was gone, and so were all the other people that were there only a moment ago. I fearfully began wandering around the funeral home, but not a person could be found. The entire building was silent and empty. Finally, as I neared the front entrance of the building and was going to step outside, an employee approached me from the alcove on the right where they kept the coats to see if I was okay. I don't remember any of the conversation, but they turned me around and directed me back to the bathroom. When I came out of the bathroom, everything had returned to normal. Now, that person was very young. It's a very old memory they had, so finicky, but interesting story. So, is there any way to actually test whether or not we're living in a simulation? Well, not at the moment, but there are a team of scientists led by Martin Savage that have been working on it, and he believes that one day computers will be advanced enough to determine it. Martin Savage and his team had been attempting to actually simulate a universe inside a computer. Now, that hasn't been accomplished yet, but it could be a possibility in the future. Martin J. Savage is a physics professor at the University of Washington who thinks our universe might be a giant computer simulation run by our ancestors. He and his colleagues started looking for specific patterns in the universe that also appear in smaller computer simulations we create today. One pattern he used as an example is the limitations in the energy of cosmic rays. If our universe were a simulation, these cosmic rays might not behave as expected because of the resource constraints of whatever's running the simulation. That one's hard to wrap your head around. But his next glitch in the matrix story comes to us from Reddit user JBBJ84 and goes as follows. The one thing that has continued to make me question my reality is a dream I had back in 8th grade about my girlfriend who was going to break up with me. I dreamt that she was sitting in a room with her best friend discussing whether she would break up with me or not. I distinctly remember the point she made about being too young and whatever. It was a long time ago, but I do remember that after waking up from that dream, the reasons she had for breaking up with me were ingrained in my brain. For some reason, when I woke up after this dream, I had a weird feeling that I was gonna receive some bad news. Lo and behold, I checked my phone and there's a massive text message from my then girlfriend explaining why we should break up, with the exact same reasoning as I witnessed in the dream I had. Even weirder is that I found out the friend I had seen in my dream was actually with my ex when she sent the message. It was the weirdest effing thing I've ever experienced. It was completely out of the blue, and I didn't expect the breakup text at all before the dream. Now, after I've read about simulation theory, the thought can't stop popping into my mind that somehow I was able to visualize the next part of this gain tree, that I unexpectedly was able to view what was going to happen next. It still bugs me today and gives me existential anxiety because I still don't have a plausible explanation as to why I had such a specific dream that actually ended up coming true. David Chalmers is a well-known philosopher who focuses on the nature of consciousness, looking into why and how physical processes in the brain give us the feeling of being conscious. Chalmers is also interested in the idea that we might be living in a computer simulation. Now, Chalmers really makes the whole simulation thing seem less scary than it sounds. He has a much more chill view on it in general. One of Chalmers' key points is that if we are living in a simulation, it wouldn't necessarily change our everyday experiences or the fact that we have minds and are conscious. He thinks that even if our world is just some sophisticated simulation, it would still be real to us. Our feelings, thoughts, experiences, it'd still be genuine, even if the actual reality is different from what we see it as. So he looks at more the philosophical side rather than the scientific details. He's interested in how a scenario like this would impact our understanding of reality and consciousness. Finally, though, we have a story again from Reddit user Respect Remarkable 294 with a post entitled, "I was never there before." She writes, "I had never in my life been to Universal, but when I was planning our dual vacation at Disney and Universal, my kids kept asking me what rides were at Disney because I had been there before, and I told them every single ride and every detail that I could remember. The Mummy, Men in Black, The Simpsons, you get the picture. Only to realize not one of them are at Disney rides. My explanation, well, maybe Disney used to own them. I know, stupid, but whatever gets me through the day. We go on our trip and go to Men in Black, and we're waiting in line, and I tell my husband everything that's gonna happen right before it's happening. It's like I remembered a script. Same thing is happening on all the other rides. However, it doesn't happen on the newer ones, like Harry Potter rides, etc. I called my mom and asked her again if we'd ever been there when we were young, and again she told me no. I am 38 years old. I would have definitely remembered, but I keep asking. It just feels wrong, and I feel like I'm being lied to. I also know for a fact that I never have been to Universal, and I've never been on these rides prior. I never watched videos either. I hate having rides ruined with them. Of course, all this simulation stuff is impossible to really test or prove, right? At least at this stage. So it's just something that's interesting to ponder. Plus, if we really are in a simulation, the rules of our universe are probably completely controlled by the creators of whatever this simulation is. So it'd be pretty tricky to find definitive evidence or glitches in the system. Hey, until we find out, let's just, I don't know, keep enjoying it as best as we can.
Starting off, we were talking about the argument of high probability. Some philosophers like Nick Bostrom have cooked up a theory that feels like it can't be real, but it is actually taken quite seriously by some scientists. They say there's a high chance that we are living in a simulation. Bostrom argues that one of these three scenarios is probably true. First, that extinction is the norm. Almost all civilizations out there, like ours, never make it past a certain point. They wipe themselves out or get destroyed before they can really get advanced technology. It's a little bit terrifying, right? Imagine countless civilizations reaching the brink of greatness only to fall into the abyss of extinction. It's like cosmic Russian roulette. The second scenario is that no one's playing games. The advanced civilizations that do make it decide running simulations of their past, like their own version of super advanced ancestry.com, is boring or pointless. So they don't bother creating these massive virtual worlds to see what their ancestors were like. The third scenario is that this is all make-believe. Definitely the scariest of the scenarios, that we are actually living in a giant computer game right now. That our entire universe with its stars, planets, and morning coffee is just some super advanced alien software running on a cosmic computer. So why is this unsettling? Well, If we're in a simulation, then who's controlling it? What happens if they decide to hit the off switch? It's like being a character in someone else's video game, and it makes you wonder, are our choices really our own, or are we just following the pre-written code of some cosmic programmer? This theory gives a whole new meaning to the question, what is reality? And honestly, it's a little bit spooky when you really think about it. Next, we are talking about the second law of infodynamics. So a physicist studying the mutations of the SARS-CoV-2 virus has stirred up quite the conversation with claims that hint we might be living in a simulated universe. Dr. Melvin Vopson, the scientist behind these claims, introduces, quote, the second law of infodynamics, suggesting that mutations in the virus aren't random but follow this new law. He's found that information entropy, a measure of disorder from an information perspective, decreases over time in these mutations, opposing what we see with typical entropy, which increases. This discovery is more than just a quirky observation. Vopson argues it could flip our understanding of evolution on its head and even hint at a universe that's more orderly and deterministic than we thought. He connects this to the idea that the universe might be a giant simulation, designed with data optimization to minimize computational needs. In his studies, particularly with the ever-mutating SARS-CoV-2, Vopson has observed patterns that he believes can't be dismissed as random. He suggests that if we start viewing genetic mutations deterministically, we could potentially predict mutations before they happen, which could revolutionize genetic therapies and vaccine development. However, the physics community is still skeptical, and more research is needed to test these very bold ideas. Vopson's theory, while intriguing, remains on the fringe, and proving it might involve experiments that check if information itself has mass, a concept that could tie back to everything from the heat death of the universe to why symmetry is so common in nature. So while the second law of infodynamics opens up fascinating possibilities, it is a long road from hypothesis to accepted science, especially with claims this big. But who knows? Sometimes the strangest ideas lead to the most profound discoveries. Next, we are talking about the limitations in the laws of physics. So think about the speed of light. Nothing can go faster, right? It's like the universe has a top speed limit, and no matter what you do, you can't break it. This reminds some people of a video game, where the game can only process things so fast, so it sets limits to keep everything running smoothly. Then there's the Heisenberg uncertainty principle, a weird rule in quantum mechanics that says you can't know both the position and the speed of a tiny particle at the same time. It's as if the universe saves on processing power by not deciding where something is until it absolutely has to, kind of like a game that only loads the parts of the world you're looking at to save memory. These rules of physics might make you wonder if they're just programming constraints in a giant cosmic simulation set up to keep things manageable for whatever's running the show. Isn't it a bit like we're living in a cleverly crafted game where certain things are off limits to prevent the whole system from crashing? It's definitely a wild thought, but it sure makes you look at those science class lessons a little bit differently. Next, we are talking about the observer effect. So have you ever heard of the downright bizarre behavior of particles in the quantum world? In quantum mechanics, things get really weird because particles, like electrons, don't settle on a specific location or path until we actually check up on them. Kind of like they're all potential and no decision until observed. This quirkiness is known as quantum indeterminacy and the observer effect. So now think about how video games work. Alright, it's just the easiest parallel, so there's going to be a lot of video game talk. They don't bother rendering every single part of the game world all at once. Instead, they only show you what's in your current view to save on the processing power. It's like the game is saying, why bother with the rest if you're not even looking there? This is eerily similar to what's happening at the quantum level. It's as if our universe is running a super efficient simulation, doing calculations only when necessary to make sure it doesn't waste any resources. This parallel makes some folks wonder if maybe, just maybe, we're living in some sort of cosmic video game where things aren't fully decided until they need to be. Next, we are talking about mathematical consistencies. Have you ever noticed how everything in the universe seems to follow a specific set of rules, almost like it's all part of a gigantic mathematical equation. Pretty wild when you actually think about it, from the way the planets orbit the sun to how your coffee spreads out when you spill it. There's math everywhere. This isn't just a coincidence. The universe is actually incredibly consistent and can be described really well using mathematical principles, just like a computer program. This consistency is what gets some people thinking. Maybe our universe is a bit like a game or a simulation. I mean, really just think about it. In video games, everything from the graphics to the physics is governed by code, by math. So when scientists find that even the most chaotic and complex systems in our universe can still be nailed down with equations, it makes you wonder if there's some sort of computational foundation underneath it all. So why is this exciting? Well, it suggests that maybe our whole universe could be running on a vast cosmic computer with every star, planet, and galaxy following a set of mathematical instructions. It's like the universe is a giant puzzle and math is the key to unlocking its secrets. I feel like that's a nightmare for a lot of us. Like, oh no, not math. The one thing I can't understand. I actually like math. Well, I guess we all have to.
So if the universe we're living in is really as expansive as it appears to be, why do we seem to be alone? Now, this is assuming, of course, you don't believe we've already made contact with aliens. I can go either way on this. I find some of the stories pretty convincing, but I've never actually seen a UFO or an alien myself. For the purpose of this point, let's just say the government is not keeping aliens hidden away in some underground lab somewhere. So if not, then where the hell are they? For all the transmissions and probes we've sent out into space, you'd think we'd have made some form of contact by now. All your friends are just other humans. I don't know if you've noticed, unless you're pets, you got pets, maybe those could be your friends, but yeah, I mean, there's no Klingons or Wookiees anywhere to be seen. So the point is, maybe we haven't made contact with anything because space really isn't as massive as it appears to be. Nothing is, because none of this is really here. It's just a highly advanced simulation with only enough RAM to render one advanced civilization at a time. Or maybe everything we see is technically here, but it's all been artificially created by some advanced being that we have no way of contacting.
It is possible that a team of scientists conducted an experiment that found proof that we are living in a simulated universe. Back in 2017, these scientists at the University of Washington totally shook up the scientific world when they proved that they could sneak computer code into real human DNA. If you're like me, you're probably wondering why on earth they would need to ever do that, and the answer is to expose a vulnerability in gene sequencing computers. But by showing that our biological building blocks could be hacked, just like computer code, they may have accidentally opened up Pandora's box. By showing that our DNA can be hacked like a computer code, they may have shown something that is straight out of the Matrix. Maybe what we thought was our biological reality is actually just zeros. It's basically like finding out that we're living in a super advanced simulation where DNA isn't just the stuff of life, it's the stuff of code.
Next up, we have the climate simulation theory. So some have speculated that our world might actually be a giant simulation in order to test out how to deal with a global crisis like climate change, for example. First, there's the idea that our civilization is headed towards big trouble because of climate change. We're messing with the environment with all, the pollution and stuff. And if we keep going like this, it could lead to some serious problems like floods, droughts, and all sorts of other bad stuff. Now, some folks think that maybe all this chaos is happening because we're actually part of a simulation, that maybe some super advanced beings created our world as a simulation to see how we deal with a big energy crisis or world-ending issue. I mean, it would make sense if we had the ability ourselves to create a virtual world within a computer to test out how to deal with various problems. We totally would. So maybe that's exactly what's happening right now, and we just don't know it.
What if a teeny tiny little measurement is what breaks the simulation? Enter the Planck length. This super small measurement is like the Lego brick of the universe. At this small of a scale, even our own physics, like the concepts of gravity and space-time, aren't really quite sure what to do, and the rules no longer apply. This is exactly what has simulation enthusiasts wondering, could this little measurement be the simulation's way of showing that it is in fact just that? A simulation. Each Planck length is a single pixel, one bit of information. Could this be the blueprints to the Matrix?
How do you explain all the unexplained things people have been claiming to experience since pretty much the dawn of time? That's a bizarre sentence. Doors slamming on their own, phantom footsteps, apparitions. Well, people will either say it was a ghost, and then non-believers scoff. But they don't really have much of an explanation of their own other than some form of your brain was playing some sort of trick on you. Is that really the best explanation that we can come up with though? That we're just hearing or seeing things that aren't really there? Maybe there's a meatier explanation, something with a little more substance. Maybe paranormal experiences are actually glitches in the Matrix. Those translucent figures people have seen in old buildings wearing old Victorian era clothing could be the computer just glitching, showing a brief flash of something that's already happened. Same thing with the phantom sounds like footsteps or laughter or fart. Why do we never hear ghost farts? You know what I mean? It's always footsteps, laughter, creepy stuff, but it's never anything funny.
Next, I'm gonna hit you with a bit of an Uno reverse here. Nuclear physicist Zore Davuti serves up a mind-bending idea. Cosmic rays, those cosmic cannonballs of energy, could hold the key to unlocking the truth behind the simulation theory. In a simulated universe, these rays might look like chunky pixels on an old school video game screen, while in the real deal, they'd stretch out like never-ending spaghetti strands. But here's the real kicker. Even if we found these pixelated particles, there's no guarantee we're not just caught up in some super advanced version of The Sims. What I mean by this is summed up perfectly by NYU philosopher David Chalmer. Quote, "You're not going to get proof that we're not in a simulation because any evidence that we get could be simulated. Proving we're not in a simulation is like trying to catch fog with a net. Any evidence we could dig up could be part of the simulation itself, leaving us scratching our heads. So next time you feel like reality's playing tricks on you, just remember, it might be because we're all just pixels in someone else's reality."
Alright, the simulated multiverse theory. The simulated multiverse theory suggests that our entire universe is basically a massive computer simulation. Imagine our reality being like a highly advanced video game or computer program that we're just unknowingly living inside of, and everything we experience is generated by some incredibly powerful computer. Now, who could be the ones running this simulation? It could be extraterrestrial beings with highly advanced technology, or even humans from the far future running a simulation to learn about their own ancestry, like a gigantic virtual reality experiment. But if our universe is just one big simulation, there could be countless other simulations running simultaneously, each representing a separate universe with its own unique set of rules. Basically, it's just a bunch of alien children learning about us, and they're all just in their own little screens, watching different versions of it. Next, we have the string theory multiverse. So scientists have a theory called string theory. Instead of thinking of particles as tiny dots, they imagine them as super tiny vibrating strings. So string theory says that there are more than just the usual 3 dimensions of space and of time that we're used to. Imagine there are extra dimensions, but they're so tiny and curled up that we can't see them in our everyday lives. Mathematicians call these curled up dimensions Calabi-Yau manifolds, which are basically complex shapes used to describe these hidden dimensions. In the world of string theory, these extra dimensions can have different configurations or setups, kind of like multiple radio stations, each playing a different song. In this case, each configuration could represent a different set of physical laws and constants, the rules that govern how things work in our universe. Our universe, in this grand scheme of things, is like tuning into one specific radio station. But according to the string theory multiverse idea, there are countless other stations out there, each playing its own unique tune or each representing a different universe. So why does our universe have the particular rules that it does? The string theory multiverse brings in something called the anthropic principle. The principle says that the reason our universe has the specific laws it does is because those laws allow for the existence of life. If things were different, we wouldn't be here to even ponder it. Our next science-y theory on the list is quantum entanglement. So let's imagine we have two particles. We'll call these particle A and particle B, and these two particles become entangled. This means that they're somehow connected in a way that the state of one particle instantly influences the state of the other, no matter how far apart they are. This actually happens. This is very strange because in our everyday understanding of the world, information can't travel faster than the speed of light. But with entanglement, changes in one particle's state seems to happen instantaneously in the other, even if they're light years apart. So how does this relate to the possibility of parallel universes? Well, one idea is that the particles exist in multiple states at the same time until we observe them. And when we observe one particle, it instantly affects the other particle's state, no matter the distance. Some scientists speculate that when we observed one particle and it chooses a particular state, the other particle might be choosing a different state in a parallel universe. Pretty hard to wrap your head around, but alright, this next one is also pretty trippy. See if you can wrap your head around this, because I have a hard time doing so, but the holographic multiverse theory. So for this, we need to imagine that our universe is like a giant 3D movie being projected onto a screen, and that all of that information making up this cosmic movie projection is actually encoded on the surface of that screen. In simple terms, the holographic principle is based on the idea that the information needed to describe a three-dimensional structure like our universe can be represented in a two-dimensional way, like a hologram. So essentially, all the details of a 3D object are somehow encoded on a flat surface. So some scientists have suggested that our universe, as we perceive it, might actually be this holographic projection, and this would mean that everything we see around us might be a kind of illusion, and the real action is happening on the screen or the boundary of our universe. So instead of thinking of separate universes with different physical laws, the holographic multiverse suggests that all these universes, including ours, might be interconnected holographic projections. Each quote-unquote projection could represent a different set of physical laws, making it seem like its own distinct universe. This would be like having multiple TV screens, each showing a different channel. These channels, or universes, might seem independent, but the information that creates them is all encoded on the same screen. Next, we have probably the most mysterious radio signal ever detected, simply known as the WOW signal. So in 1977, the Ohio State University's radio telescope received a very odd radio signal from outer space that lasted for about 72 seconds. The signal was so unique and unexpected that astronomer Jerry R. Eyman, who was reviewing the data printout, circled the signal and just wrote WOW next to it, hence giving it that name. What made the WOW signal particularly intriguing was its frequency and intensity, which didn't match any known natural source. So what was it? Well, aliens, of course, have always been brought into the conversation, but there's also the idea that the signal might be connected to parallel universes. The signal's characteristics were so unusual that some have suggested it could be a form of communication or energy transmission from a parallel universe. Lastly, we have Deja vu. Now, this one is a bit different than everything else on this list in that it's a phenomenon we all experience relatively frequently that science hasn't been able to give a convincing explanation for, and that's led to a lot of fascinating ideas as to why it happens, including, of course, the existence of parallel universes. I say science hasn't been able to come up with a convincing explanation because, I'm sorry, but no, I do not buy that deja vu is just experiencing something similar to something you've experienced before. That is just the lamest explanation, and it seems to be the only one that the scientific world can come up with. Like, you know what we experience that's very similar day to day? Going to work, waking up, eating foods we've had before, kissing our partner if we're lucky enough to have one. Most of our lives are pretty repetitive day to day, but like we're not experiencing deja vu on a constant basis. When it pops up, it's noticeable, uncanny to an eerie degree. So what's going on here? Well, one idea is that two parallel universes perfectly line up for a brief moment, and a version of yourself from a parallel universe is in the same exact situation, performing the exact same action at the same time as you. Thus you get that odd feeling like you've done this before.
Filling our number 3 slot is quantum mechanics. Science teacher Eamon is back at it again, people. And I don't know how I'm gonna make quantum mechanics easy to understand in 1 minute, but I'm gonna try, so bear with me. And for the record, none of this is in dispute, so you can't slate me in the comments, cause even scientists aren't doing it, so haha. Now, so quantum particles exist at the subatomic level and are the smallest particles in existence. Well, from what we've discovered so far. These particles exist in a superposition state, which means they either exist in 2 places at once or they're spinning in 2 different directions simultaneously. That's their standby state. Are we understanding so far? Are we all getting this? I feel like that was a simple part. I cannot make this simpler, believe me, I tried. So this is the hard part. When these particles are not being observed in their standby state, they're taking on every possible state, position, configuration that they can. And when they're observed, the state or configuration that they're in becomes adopted, and so that's set in stone now. But at the same time, it spawns like billions of other alternate timelines in the process. Basically, these particles can be in so many configurations, and all of them represent an alternate version of reality, but we literally can't even begin to count how many possible combinations of factors and outcomes there are, but it's science. Heck, even physicists haven't even fully understood it. How am I meant to make you guys understand it on YouTube? But I think that was pretty easy to understand, and it also makes your mind wander to every possible thing that can happen, or could happen, or is happening. Dun dun dun. Now at number 2 is the black hole theory. So black holes are apparently useful for something other than stretching us into non-existence. Now the idea of black holes being gateways to parallel universes has been part of sci-fi plots for like 5 ever. But Stephen Hawking himself believes in parallel universes, and he calculated that black holes aren't just giant sinkholes where nothing ever survives. In his final calculations, he discovered that mathematically black holes must end. Eventually they have to, they just do. Based on his calculations, he realized black holes actually start to leak information and eventually explode, and that explosion would release previously trapped particles in any form. Emphasis on any if you didn't get that the first time. Being ejected via explosion wouldn't just throw someone back to where they came from, it would make them reappear somewhere else, most likely an alternate universe, and who knows what form they'll even reappear in. And finally, at number 1 is the Professor. Now this story took place in the early 1970s on the campus of the University of the Andes in Venezuela. A prominent unnamed professor has been missing for the last 40-50 years, and how he disappeared has led people to believe he slipped into a parallel world. One afternoon, many students saw him walking across the parking lot of one of the buildings. He even stopped to chat with a student as he went to his car. He got to his car, he saw some students wave at him, and he waved back. And when he finally got into the car and closed the door, he straight up disappeared. And I'm not talking disappeared as in he drove away and was never seen again. No, the car was never driven, it was just stood there, and he sat in the car and disappeared into thin air. After police conducted interviews with witnesses, it was concluded no one saw him get out of the car either. The story was so big it was even covered by El Tiempo, one of the largest Venezuelan newspapers. Like, how did he just disappear like that? Mind blown.
In our number 10 spot, we have unknown objects. Over the years, archaeologists have discovered items while on expeditions that they truly can't explain. Objects that cannot be identified as an object of this world, or an object that is so old and doesn't fit with our idea as to what existed during that time. A good example of this is a hammer that was found in London in the 1930s. And this hammer is said to be over 500 million years old when humans weren't known to exist. There is also the Antikythera object that is a stone-like computer that was found near a Greek island. A stone computer. What? These items are from civilizations and times where there is no other data and proof that they existed, and so some have of course concluded that perhaps they are objects left by time travelers or dimension travelers. Or perhaps alien species. I think dimension travelers. What do you think? Let me know in the comment section below. In our number 9 spot we have the case of Lerina Garcia. This is a story that was covered in the news around the world because of how different it was, and how it may possibly prove the existence of alternate realities. Allegedly, a young woman by the name of Lerina Garcia woke up one morning to find that nothing was familiar to her. Her home, her friends, job, everything was completely different, as if she was brand new to this planet. Many think that the reason everything was so far off is because she slipped into another dimension. No explanation made more sense, as she was still her and looked like her, and yet everything, her whole world, was completely different. People have speculated that she suffered from memory loss. However, all signs pointed to her being in perfect health, not to mention nothing traumatic had occurred that would make anyone believe that theory. This sounds actually so similar to a popular book called 1,000 Pieces of You. I bet the author based the story off of this story. If you like the idea of alternative realities, then I would very much recommend that book. In our number 8 spot we have Deja vu. This is a phenomena that is widely talked about, as it is seemingly a phenomena that almost everyone experiences. The phenomena that is deja vu is essentially a weird sensation that you have experienced a situation once before. You have a feeling kinda like, yeah, this happened before, or this feels familiar. People try to explain it off as if it is something familiar that you are thinking is similar, or it is some kind of troubleshooting in the brain. There are also other versions of deja vu, such as deja vu, a feeling that you know what's going to happen next, or alter vu, which is the act of remembering your history differently. Similar to the case of Lerina Garcia, where the person realizes that the world around them is unfamiliar and they can recognize their history and recognize the history forming in front of their eyes as well. Pretty trippy. What if psychic predictions are just knowings that we have from other realities, and maybe when they don't happen and we feel sure that they were supposed to happen, then maybe that fate wasn't meant for this reality, but it is meant for another reality. Ooh, interesting. In our number 7 spot we have the Berenstain Bears phenomena. If you haven't heard of this sign of an alternative reality, then perhaps you did not grow up in the 90s, when literally everyone I speak to that grew up in this time seems to remember this book being called the Berenstain Bears, not the Berenstain Bears as it is seemingly published as today. This has been a popular thread on internet chat rooms for many years now, and so widely talked about. Most people believe it to be a sign that we possibly jumped into another reality in the millennium, or perhaps in 2012, or just in another time, because there are just too many people that are confused about the name change. If we didn't jump into another reality, then I'm convinced some aliens have changed it somehow to mess with all of us. One of the two theories feels about right. In our number 6 spot we have the many worlds theory. There is a physicist by the name of Hugh Everett who, back in 1957, came up with a theory of multiple realities in quantum mechanics, and he suggested that all possible alternate histories and futures are real, but are within their own worlds. This theory basically states that any possible occurrence that could have happened in reality would be a world of its own. Whoa. It's a theory that is one of the more popular ones in the physics and philosophy world, being added to and expanded upon by other physicists such as Bryce Sillingman DeWitt. In our number 5 spot we have dreams. Out of all the explained phenomena in the world, we've even placed a person on the moon, for Christ's sakes, we have not been able to solve the mystery of our dreams. Researchers are nowhere close to understanding exactly how the mind works, and dreams are an element that are still quite a mystery. Nobody quite knows if dreams are a result of the brain as it rests. The brain perhaps sorts through thoughts, memories, and anxieties, or do we perhaps jump into other worlds and realities in our dreams? Some think both. There's also the phenomenon of astro travel that many have proven to have done in dreams, and were able to give accurate information when they've woken up about what happened while they were dreaming. So yet another phenomenon about dreams we can't explain. But my money is on jumping into alternative realities. I've had too many weird dreams in my life that make me think, yeah, that's probably true. In our number 4 spot we have Taured. Okay, this story is kind of wild. Apparently, in the year 1954, there was a man coming into Tokyo Airport in Japan with a passport from a country that didn't exist. The customs officials grilled the man on why he had a fake passport and fake custom papers, and he insisted that his passport and papers were real. He apparently had all kinds of bank statements and documents from a country in Europe called Taured. Apparently this country has thousands of years of history as well. The man was held in a hotel room for several hours while the government analyzed his papers, only to go into the hotel room and find him to be vanished. Yeah, that's enough proof for me. Clearly he was a person from another reality where Taured is a country. Cool. What a wild story. I'm surprised that a movie hasn't been made about this yet. In our number 3 spot we have ghosts. There are some scientific theories out there that possibly tie ghosts to people from alternative realities. I know we usually think of ghosts and think that they're our deceased loved ones who have moved on to wherever, another place. But some scientists have theorized that perhaps ghosts are actually some kind of bleed through from alternative realities, a sort of misfiring of electrons that have landed on a possible wrong plane of existence. Or perhaps it really is just our deceased loved ones in an alternative reality, and that's where we move on to when we pass away. Who knows, but interesting to think about. In our number 2 spot we have superposition. Okay, so scientific research has led us to have a good understanding of how the universe works, as we have been able to observe the behavior of electrons and protons, which make up atoms, and in case you don't know, but atoms make up humans and every object on this planet. Something that we have learned through observing protons and electrons is that they can be in multiple places or in multiple states of existence all simultaneously. This has been called superposition. This means that people and things could also possibly exist in multiple states of reality, too, thus proving to me that alternative realities exist. I wonder if there's a reality that I'm a princess. That just feels right. In our number 1 spot today we have the Large Hadron Collider. There is a Large Hadron Collider that has been subjected to many urban legends over the years. This Hadron Collider is the world's largest and highest particle collider that lies 27 kilometers deep below the surface between the France and Switzerland border. It was originally created by CERN, the European Organization for Nuclear Research, between 1998 and 2008, as a collab between 10,000 scientists and hundreds of labs and universities from over 100 different countries. Anyways, some say that the purpose of this was to possibly create a black hole in reality, but of course this is just hearsay and a theory. Regardless of what they are actually doing down there, they did stumble across some crazy evidence that may further prove the existence of alternate realities. By throwing a bunch of particles around at crazy speeds, these scientists were able to measure how long particles disappeared for, and it has been assumed that they traveled to new dimensions or planes of existence. Apparently one of the scientists at CERN by the name of Aurélien Barraud has been quoted as saying, "The multiverse is no longer a model, it is a consequence of our models." Fascinating is all I've got to say. I'm obsessed with Interstellar, and apparently that movie did a very good representation as to describing what is believed to be the 5th dimension and what could be assumed as an alternate reality. God, my little 3rd dimension brain is feeling mind blown thinking about all this. I think I'm gonna go take a nap now.
And we're starting off the list with the bubble universes theory. So imagine the universe right after the Big Bang, acting kind of like a giant balloon, rapidly inflating. This is the main concept of the cosmic inflation theory. According to this theory, the early universe expanded extremely quickly. Now here's where it gets kind of interesting. Picture this rapid expansion like different regions of the balloon inflating at their own speeds. In some areas, inflation happens a bit faster, in others, it's a bit slower. This creates pockets or bubbles within this expanding universe, kind of like different regions on the surface of the inflating balloon. In each of these bubbles, a unique set of physical laws and conditions takes shape. Each bubble becomes its own little universe with its own rules of how things work, its own arrangement of matter, energy, and who knows what else. Next up we have cold spots. So imagine you're an astrophysicist looking at the vastness of space. Back in 2015, scientists in Hawaii noticed something strange, a huge empty patch where there should have been 10,000 galaxies. They called it a cold spot because it seemed like everything there had just vanished. Now, scientists at Durham University came up with a pretty fascinating idea about this mysterious cold spot. They think it might be because our universe collided with another universe, almost like two giant soap bubbles bumping into one another. When these universes collide, it could push all the energy and stuff out of a specific area, creating a big empty space, the cold spot. We might be living in one bubble universe out of trillions, and this cold spot could be the aftermath of a collision with another bubble universe. It's a bit like when two ripples in a pond meet and create a calm spot in the water. Alright, now this one is pretty cool, even though it has math in the title. It's the mathematical multiverse theory. This idea centers around the concept that our entire universe is like a giant cosmic equation, and every bit of it, from tiny particles to vast galaxies, can be described and understood using math. Understood by other people and not by me, because math was just... I get sick even just saying the word. That's the core idea though behind the mathematical universe theory. This theory suggests that there are countless mathematical structures and each one represents a different universe. Since there are infinite mathematical possibilities, this would also mean, in theory, an infinite number of universes. So think of it a bit like this. Our universe is just one solution to the grand mathematical equation that is existence. In this mathematical multiverse, each universe has its own unique set of rules and conditions, an infinite collection of parallel universes where physics and math can be totally different from what we know. For instance, one example I tend to use, in one universe, gravity might act in a way that pulls things sideways, while in another, it might pull things up. If you're unaware, our gravity pulls us down, but the possibilities are really endless in this theory. Next on the list, of course, black holes. I mean, we gotta talk about black holes in a video like this. Black holes are mysterious regions in space where gravity is so strong that nothing, even light, can escape their gravitational pull. In the traditional understanding, once something crosses the event horizon of a black hole, it seemingly is just gone forever, lost to the singularity at the center. But some physicists have a different idea that black holes could lead to parallel universes. It's called the wormhole hypothesis. This idea here is that a black hole could potentially connect to a white hole or another region of space-time through a tunnel-like structure called a wormhole. A white hole is a hypothetical region where matter and light are ejected, basically the opposite of a black hole. I mean, really, that is the opposite. So instead of being forever stuck inside the black hole, the matter and information falling into a black hole might be transferred through a wormhole to another region of space, or even a completely separate universe, almost acting like a bridge between our universe and a parallel one.
Alright, coming in at number 10, we have the simulation hypothesis / the matrix theory. It seems that our mate Elon Musk believes that we could be living in a simulated universe. Of course he does. He said that there is a 1,000,000,000 chance that we are living in a base reality. 1,000,000,000 to 1. Really? Now the theory seems to suggest that actually we're living in a computer simulation just like in the Matrix. Word on the street at the New Yorker is that actually right now there are two tech billionaires secretly engaging scientists to work on breaking us out of the simulation as we speak. So who is running this simulation? Apparently it is a post-human civilization. The long and short of the majority of the theories is that computers have already taken over and they're keeping us living in a simulation out of the way. Why isn't it a perfect utopia? here? Well, that just wouldn't be believable, would it? Or would it? I don't know, where's the evidence here? Well, amongst other slightly crazy suggestions, some say that the universe is a simulation because it seems to behave mathematically and is broken up into pieces, subatomic particles, like a pixelated video game. I don't know, I'm not so sure. Coming in at number 9, I do believe in this, we have deja vu. What is deja vu? Is it a glitch in the Matrix like Morpheus claimed, or is it a lived moment from our parallel lives, or is it some other kind of brain phenomenon that we just don't know too much about yet? According to Dr. Michio Kaku, an American futurist, deja vu occurs as a result of a person's ability to flip between universes. Others believe it's because we're vibrating in unison with the frequency of another universe that's parallel with our own. Mind melt. I actually really enjoy Dr. Kaku's Twitter. He posts thought-provoking science riddles, plus his profile picture is golden. Coming in at number 8, we have the Large Hadron Collider is a time machine. Like, is it? The Large Hadron Collider is a 17-mile-long supermachine that smashes particles together at nearing light speed. Now, the machine is based in Switzerland, and there has been a lot of suspicion and speculation about it. Some people think it is possible for the machine to create microscopic black holes. Others say it makes time travel possible. There is an absolutely wild theory out there that an experiment at the Large Hadron Collider caused an Iberworld Airbus A330-300 to land 5,500 miles away from its intended location, and it caused a power outage across South America. An article on the website Freedom Fighter Times claimed the power released from the LHC was so strong that it sent a time warp across the planet. Honestly, I'm not sure if I'm here for that, also lol at the title of their publication, but others do suggest that the LHC can create conditions that allow matter and radiation to travel backwards and forwards in time. A lot of credible science articles have written of the possibility of creating a wormhole. Now, this invites all kinds of drama via the grandfather paradox. If you travel back in time and kill your grandfather, does that mean that in the future you don't exist? Or does it create a parallel universe of alternative outcomes? Coming into number 7, we have what is at the end of a black hole. Recently, we got our first ever picture of a black hole. Our knowledge on black holes is still a little sketchy. We only have what we've observed, and what we have observed has been pretty damn far away. We know that black holes are very dense and that they exhibit such strong gravitational pulls on all things that nothing can escape their draws, not even the fastest moving particles we know, light. What happens to the particles once they're drawn inside the black hole? Well, we don't actually know. One theory is that the black hole is a portal to a different part of space. It's a parallel universe, if you will. Now, towards the end of his life, the late great Stephen Hawking was actually working on a theory of multiverses that included black holes. He alluded to the possibility of a black hole spilling its matter out into a separate place in space-time, a new universe maybe. He said the hole would need to be large, and if it was rotating, it might be a passage to another universe. He did say though if we travelled through, we probably couldn't come back to our own, so I'm not sure if I'd want to go. Ooh, coming into number 6, we have every outcome / the cat theory. So let me tell you about Schrödinger's cat. This is a thought experiment and paradox that could imply multiple outcomes. So the experiment is thus: if you place a cat and something that could kill the cat in a box and you seal it, you would not know if the cat was alive or dead until you open the box. So, until the box is opened, the cat, in a sense, is both alive and dead. Are you with me? You might not be when I say the next sentence, but let's just say it anyway. So, electrons, little subatomic particles found in all atoms, can spin both forwards and backwards, but they can't spin in each direction at the same time. They choose an outcome. So, the cat could both be alive and dead, or actually, maybe it's both. According to the parallel universe theories of Everett and Davis, the act of observation makes a universe diverge, and both universes can exist. There's one where the cat's alive and one where the cat's dead. They both come into existence. Every decision or situation could create a different outcome. It creates a diversion in the current universe, making for more parallel universes. Universe I? Does it make sense? I guess the mind kind of boggles, but let me give you an example. There could be a universe out there where I didn't move to Canada. and obviously the world that I'm living in where I did. Obviously, for me, the difference in those two outcomes would have been very, very different, but then perhaps there's a world in which I decided to wear pink today and not yellow, which would still be different, but maybe less dramatically so. Or so I think. Who knows? Coming into number 5, we have the interaction. Michael Hall authored a paper on quantum theory, which includes the concept of every outcome. The cat both exists and doesn't exist, we just talked about this. Hall and a team from the Griffith University in Australia not only believe in the multiverse, but they believe that it interacts with our reality. They believe that infinite multiple worlds overlap and occupy the same region of space and time simultaneously. They think that the other worlds have subtle influences on our own. For example, strange occurrences, miracles, according to the interaction theory, are as a result of the parallel universes. Have you ever looked in the mirror and thought that actually your reflection didn't quite match up? Is it the multiverse? Coming in at number 4, we have the Mandela effect. This is classic parallel universe theory, and honestly, this one does freak me out the most because I guess we've all had one of those moments of thinking, damn, I swear that wasn't the way I remembered it. So let me explain. The Mandela effect is the name given to multiple shared but factually wrong memories. There are a bunch of people out there that remember freedom fighter and former president of South Africa, Nelson Mandela, dying in prison in the 1980s, except he didn't. He died in 2013. Similarly, some people staunchly swear that the Berenstain Bears was spelt with an E and not an A, and honestly, I thought that the Looney Tunes were the Looney Tunes until I watched a video about the Mandela effect last year, and I was really confused because tunes doesn't even make any sense, does it? They're cartoons. Why? Other people also swear that Sex and the City was Sex in the City, but it wasn't unless you were living in the universe that it was. So yeah, the theory goes that you were right, you're just from a parallel universe where those subtle differences were in effect. I suppose this could also feed into the interaction theory. Coming into number 3, we have the bruises and cold spots of the universe. Stephen Feeney of University College in London announced that he had discovered patterns of radiation background left over from the Big Bang that seemed to suggest that our universe bumped into none other than 4 other universes at some point in its lifespan and is left bruised. 4 bruised. Similarly, astronomers have found so-called cold areas of the universe. Now, these CMB cold spots are areas of the observable universe that we have interpreted in microwaves. Now, they seem to be unusually, well, cold. Many people call one particular area the Great Void. Now it seems that this area of space-time contains 10,000 less galaxies than other areas of a similar size in space that have been studied. A lot of people, including scientists from the University of Durham, believe this to be evidence of a parallel universe that is smashed into ours, or are they overlapping? Is this, once again, the great interaction that we talked about? Coming in at number 2, we have dreams and the unconscious. Some people think that dreams and the time spent unconscious allows us to access a parallel universe. This is why we dream in 3D. Again, this is why dreams sometimes don't always make sense, because not every universe may have the same laws of physics that we do. This is why we often dream of people that are no longer in our lives that we haven't seen for years, because perhaps in a parallel universe they're still around you, or so the theory goes. Now this theory seems to be held as a belief by some First Nations tribes, and I don't know, maybe there is something to it. Building on from this, at number 1 we have coma stories. So this actually does get pretty crazy. Sleep is one thing, but extended periods of sleep or unconsciousness allow for people to access the parallel universe for a longer period of time. Maybe. There was a really sad story posted on Reddit by Tempt to Sassoon 7 years ago. Now they were involved in an accident and they were unconscious for a while, but during that period of unconsciousness, they lived 10 years of a different life. Now in the story they say that he met a woman, he loved the woman, they ended up getting married, they had 2 kids, and they were happy. They were living an almost perfect life. But one day, he noticed that something was wrong with the lamp in his living room. It was kind of melting and contorting in some way. It was after 3 days of staring at the lamp and many worried conversations with his wife that actually he came to the realization that the lamp wasn't real. It started to invert and take up his entire perspective until all he was aware of was red hot pain. Now he awoke from his period of unconsciousness and discovered that the 10 years that he'd spent with his wife and children simply weren't real. He dreamed it all up somehow. He said he spent the next 3 years of his life in a state of severe depression, grieving the loss of a wife and child that actually just weren't real. He thought he was going insane. He said, "I've had many personal messages describing similar experiences and 3 posters stating such experiences are impossible. I'd say that there needs to be more research done into brain function. Pre-med students, don't assume you know everything." Honestly, I don't know what it was about that story, but it really got to me. It was kind of horrifying and creepy. But the young man, did he simply awake in a parallel universe? This is just one story of many. I've read a lot of coma stories like this where people think that they've lived other lives. I don't know, has anyone seen the TV show The OA? For example, they talk about that a lot. Is it a sign of a parallel universe? Honestly, I feel a bit creeped out.
Starting off in our number 10 spot, we have the infinite versions of our universe. Okay. Let's start off at the beginning. Well, the beginning of what is our observable universe, which was the Big Bang that happened 13.8 billion years ago. This is when our observable universe was born, which is finite, but the universe itself, which our universe is a small part of, is infinite and could have been born infinite. Since we can put a timeline on when our universe came into existence, which is that 13.8 billion years we just talked about, we can place a timeline on the things in our own universe. Everything in our universe is finite. But beyond our universe and the stars and galaxies and matter and all of that sciencey stuff is the universe, which would lead us to believe that there are many more infinite universes that are just like our own, but that are beyond our knowledge because of the fact that the speed of light, as well as the beginning of ours, the Big Bang, is finite. If there is an infinite amount of universe out there, then it only seems reasonable to believe that the same sort of creation of our finite universe happened an infinite amount of times. In our number 9 spot today, we have infinite universes. Piggybacking off of that last point, we have the fact that there just might be even more universes. Like, not just more of our kind of universe, but more of the universe. The Big Bang started off our universe, but it was not the beginning of everything. The Big Bang, which we all know happened when? 13.8 billion years ago, was the first time the universe could be described as hot, dense, and full of matter and antimatter and radiation and all of that. But there was stuff going on before that happened. Prior to the Big Bang, there was a period of cosmic inflation. This inflation leads to the growing of space-time, and this means that if that period occurred for an infinite amount of time, there could be an infinite amount of universes that are all finite, and one of these universes happens to contain ours. Does that make sense? This video really is all a person needs to feel exceptionally small and very insignificant. In our number 8 spot today, we have daughter universes. Before I dive into this one, guys, please don't forget to hit the thumbs up button if you're enjoying the video so far. Let's try and make this the universe where this video has the most likes. Let's do it. This one is just a theory about if there are multiple parallel universes that exist and what they contain. This is where the theory of daughter universes comes into play. It is possible that multiple universes may follow the theory of quantum mechanics, which is how subatomic particles behave. Following the laws of probability, the daughter universes happen when you are faced with a decision. In our reality, you make your decision and it plays out one way, but in the daughter universes, they would each involve you making every other decision you could have made in that moment, which would then lead to whatever outcome that decision would have ended up leading to. This just means that there may be a universe for the opposite of every decision you've ever made in your life, and one for every decision anyone has ever made. How likely is this? I'm not sure, but if we ever find a way to jump to other universes, there goes the days of regret. In our number 7 spot today, we have bubble universes. For this one, we need to imagine our universe as a bubble, which it kind of is. The swelling bubble of our universe is just one bubble among many. Well, as we all now know, it is possibly just one among an infinite amount, all of which are swelling and expanding. All these bubbles make up the multiverse. This itself is of course just a theory that was made in an attempt to understand the origins and beginnings of our universe, but now it is being researched further. Physicists have begun studies on how and when universes might collide and bubble up together. I do understand that this is not concrete proof or evidence, but we wouldn't be researching it if it wasn't a possibility. This research could potentially lead us in the direction where we get to see some real proof, or at the very least, give us a better understanding into the theories of how multiple universes exist exist and how they could potentially interact with one another. In our number 6 spot today, we have the lack of evidence. This evidence is more so about the lack of evidence there is to say that the multiverse doesn't exist. Many scientists find the idea of the multiverse alarming or even unscientific because of the fact that there's no way for us to test for it. There is no way to make predictions that fall in line with data, and no way to really verify its existence, whether it's one parallel universe or an infinite amount. But there isn't really any evidence or data to support the theory that we are the only universe that exists. If our universe was created basically out of happenstance, what could stop another universe from being created at the same time or out of a similar happenstance? The idea and theory of the multiverse itself is relatively quite young and new, so it is possible that we will find the evidence to persuade most of us to one side or another, but as of right now, anything is possible. And maybe in another parallel universe, we already know all about the existence of this one. Maybe there's another me watching me make this video being like, oh, you don't know anything. In our number 5 spot today, we have the cold spot. The cold spot was first discovered in 2004, and it is basically just what it sounds like. It's an area in the universe that is slightly colder than that surrounding it. And when I say slightly, I really do mean very slightly. But when I call it an area, I'm talking about a huge one, as it is around 1.8 billion light years across. It was first believed that this area may be colder due to a lack of galaxies, but a newer study suggested that that is not possible, which led researchers down a different path in search of new theories as to why the cold spot exists. One of the most exciting is the theory that this may have occurred due to a collision between our universe and another bubble universe. A bubble universe is what we just spoke about in the last part, and they make up the multiverse, which would be the uncountable realms that all sit side by side, but that are in higher dimensions than our senses are able to interpret. This, of course, is a theory, and it will require a lot of time and research before we can say for certain, but it truly is kind of crazy to think that a huge colder area of the universe could be due to a bump-in with another universe entirely. In our number 4 spot today, we have the CMB. After the Big Bang, it took around 300,000 years for things to cool down enough in order to allow atoms to form and to allow light to travel freely. This was known as the recombination, and during this time, that is when the cosmic microwave background began. The CMB is electromagnetic radiation that fills all of space, and while the space in between stars and planets and such may seem to be completely dark, the CMB is there and can sometimes, through sensitive enough technology, be seen as a kind of glow. So, how does this play into what we're talking about today? Well, scientists noticed a sort of bruise on the CMB during research, which left them wondering why. This is what led to this next parallel universe theory. If our universes are all like bubbles and one bumps into the other, it's possible that they may merge, even just for a second. This could cause some parts of one universe to spill into the other before eventually parting ways again, but this collision surely would leave some sort of a mark. And that mark just may be the bruise we saw in the CMB. In our number 3 spot today, we have the CMB Part 2. So you know what the CMB is now, and there's another thing we are looking for in it that might give us a sign of the multiverse. We thought we found evidence of this back in 2014, but it may have been a false detection, but we continue to look. Gravitational waves, which are ripples in space and time, are what we are looking for right now. The waves would have been left over from the Big Bang, and they could be putting tiny curls into the CMB. If found, this would prove the theory of cosmic inflation, which we discussed close to the beginning of this video in number 9, which would then lead us to the creation of multiple universes. It's all linked together in the most insane ways, but the universe is very cool and very complex. In our number 2 spot today, we have the Mandela effect. So, thinking about what we just talked about with the bruise and the CMB, and if our bubble universes really did collide with some other universe, and they had a moment where they may have been interconnected in some way, then this would explain the Mandela effect. If you don't know, the Mandela effect began being widely recognized when people began to swear that they could remember Nelson Mandela passing away in the 1980s. This is of course weird since he actually passed away in 2013. This time discrepancy had people obviously confused, and it has happened with many other things such as the Berenstain Bears, the movie Kazam, and honestly a whole bunch of things. There are many theories as to why the Mandela effect happens, and one of them certainly is the belief in multiple universes and some sort of crossover happening between the two. This, coupled with the possibility of colliding universes, is hard to comprehend, but it does kind of make sense. In our number 1 spot today, we have the strange particle. This might be the most concrete evidence, but we still don't really know what it means. This evidence came to us originally in 2016, but it took a few years for it to be interpreted in the way that might suggest the potential of a parallel universe. During experiments and research in the Antarctic, researchers captured what seemed to be the signal of a high-energy particle. This would be all well and fine, except for the fact that instead of coming down from above, this particle seemed to be exploding out of the ground. Despite multiple attempts to explain why this signal was appearing this way, scientists were left with not a lot of options, and one of those has to do with the fact that this strange particle just may be proof of another parallel universe that is both exceptionally similar, but also the complete opposite of our own. In order to explain this particle, there would need to be the existence of another universe that was created during the same Big Bang that created our own and exists in parallel with ours. But this universe would have to be a mirror of our own, where left is right and right is left and positive is negative and time runs backwards. It's both the most simple and most complex idea that all started with one tiny, strange particle.
Starting us off number 10 are dreams. I'm pretty sure everyone in life has wondered what their dreams meant. Anytime I dream of anything traumatic, I always Google it and I'm like, oh my god, I'm about to start a new chapter of my life, or one's about to end, what do I do? Either way, dream travel is a theory that our dreams show glimpses of alternate universes or realities that are beyond ours. In a multiverse where there are endless versions of you and your life, and they've all branched off and have lived different lives, if you're having a really vivid dream to the point it's so lifelike you feel like you're really there, it's possible we're tapping into the experiences and memories of an alternate us. Say if you keep dreaming about living in a different country or having a different job or eating something so detailed you can smell it and taste it, it's been theorized it's because you've probably already experienced those things in another timeline, and our sleeping mind somehow lets us access it. Physicists have theorized since our conscious minds' barriers are down during sleep, it allows our subconscious mind to go into the windows between realities and contact the consciousness of our other selves. This suggests that maybe our subconscious mind operates in our own reality and the others all at the same time. Another theory is that despite only seeing one course of events for each action or decision we make, we still imagine what would have happened if we did or chose differently. So based on that, our dreams could be showing us how all those other decisions would have played out if our other selves made them. That was a lot to digest, I know, and there's a lot more to come. At number 8 we have the Large Hadron Collider, LHC for short. CERN, which is the European Organization for Nuclear Research, restarted their newly upgraded LHC in order to find out more about dark matter and look for tiny black holes that could be gateways to alternate universes. This LHC is the world's most powerful particle accelerator, and the point of it is to try and recreate the conditions present during the Big Bang to see what kind of matter was produced. Its other project is finding those tiny black holes. A paper published by scientists at the University of Waterloo proposed a way to prove black holes connect our universe with other universes, so CERN intends on testing and proving their hypothesis. If they do, and it's likely that they do, it'll be the first experiment that proves the existence of alternate realities ever. Hopefully they also find out how to transition from this reality to that one. Thanks. Filling our number 7 slot is the Bermuda Triangle. I've been interested in the Bermuda Triangle ever since I found out people and airplanes and ships go missing in the area. There's just too much intrigue to not be interested. It's mysterious, things disappear, time and space becomes distorted. It's like a world of its own. The first article ever written about the place dubbed it the Sea of the Devil, which is just not the way you want to debut into the world of print. It's really not. Over the past century, there have been hundreds and hundreds of large air and sea vessels that have just disappeared. Other cases involve perfectly intact and working sea craft completely abandoned by their crew and the crew never being found. Eyewitnesses who have been and survived recall compasses going crazy when they entered the area, unusual clouds, and entering a rotating substance and exiting through a luminescent curtain of some kind. I don't know. Scientists like Einstein and Michio Kaku came up with theories about the refraction of time. Kaku had a theory about the river of time, saying it can lead to the formation of whirlpools of time in which it's possible to enter into different time spaces and that the river can fork into many directions. And obviously those different time spaces have alternate realities. The founder of the spiritual practice Falun Dafa said the triangle is definitely a gateway to another reality, but it's just very unpredictable. If the door happens to be open, then a ship ship could slip in for a moment and come back out by accident, but that second could be decades in our world because time is different in every dimension. What do you guys think? Now at number 6 is the desert blip. Back in 1972, 4 girls were coming back from a Utah rodeo and they took the Utah Highway 56. Since their landlady had a really strict 12 AM curfew and it was already 10:30, the girls decided to take a shortcut off the highway which went towards Gadianton Canyon. They were driving on black asphalt for a while, but somewhere along the way it transformed into cracked concrete. The girls encountered a dead end and went back the way they came, but it took them a few minutes to realize their surroundings had completely changed. They went from driving in the desert to driving by lush fields of wheat near a large lake. At this point the girls had no idea where they were, and in the distance they saw light coming from a building. So they went towards it, and when they got closer they saw the neon sign spell out a message which they couldn't read. The letters or symbols were twisted lines and curves, a language none of the girls had ever seen before. Then all of a sudden extremely tall men started pouring out of the building and started waving their arms and pointing at the girls and then coming towards them. They looked human but they weren't, and the girls took off screaming and crying. 30 seconds later they realized the people were following them in egg-shaped vehicles that had one headlight, 2 front wheels and 1 rear. They drove back into the canyon and soon lost the eggs, but wow, I really wonder where the hell they ended up. I'm convinced it was another universe. This sign, I can just imagine the sign being one of those fonts on Word that you have no idea what it's saying. It's probably one of those. At number 4 is the cabin. It was so hard finding links about this story, it's like the universe just didn't want me to share it and know more, but I will. But anyway, many years ago a woman and her friends went camping near a forest. They were having a good time, toasting marshmallows, the whole shebang, when they heard some music come from a stone cabin. First of all, I don't know why they weren't suspicious of a random stone cabin in the forest to begin with, but sure. Moving on, when they went to the cabin they apparently saw a bunch of people wearing 17th century clothing just dancing inside. The woman was almost drawn to it and she tried to enter it, but before she entered all the way her friend pulled her away and half her body immediately became paralyzed. Yes, the half that entered the cabin. Like out of nowhere nothing happened, she just became paralyzed. Many believe the woman actually stepped into a dimensional gateway to an alternate reality, but when she was pulled away she felt a shift that completely threw off her nervous system. I mean, obviously since our systems don't experience alternate realities frequently, and thus she became paralyzed. Filling our number 3 slot are doppelgangers. It's a tricky subject. How is it possible for someone unrelated to us at all to look exactly like us? Looks are genetic, we look the way we do because of our ancestors, I don't need to explain that, so how can anyone else look exactly like us? From a scientific and biological standpoint, it just doesn't make sense. They're meant to be us in an alternate reality living their lives, but somehow in the configuration of endless possibilities of realities and universes, a glitch occurred and 2 of the same person ended up in the same reality when technically they shouldn't have been. They're not our clones, they still carry out their own lives like they would have in the alternate reality, except they're here and they look exactly like us. And now at number 2 is Laxaria. Back in 1851, a man called Jofar Vorin was found in a German village speaking a bit of broken, weird German. When locals in the area found him, he said he spoke the languages Ibramian and Laxarian, and that he was from Laxaria, from an area called Sacria, which was separated from Europe by an ocean. He said his world had 5 great compartments, aka continents, called Sacria, Asta, Afla, Eupla, and Osla, which obviously stunned everyone because none of those things exist. He went on to say he was Christian, but that it was also called Aspasian in Laxaria. You may be wondering why he was in Germany to begin with. He could have just easily stayed in Laxaria. He was trying to find his long lost brother, but then suffered a shipwreck on his way and wound up in Germany. Despite looking at many maps, he couldn't trace his route from any shore or find his way back. People believe he's from an alternate universe and somehow ended up in ours. Who knows, maybe he went through his world's version of the Bermuda Triangle, and that's how he got here. And finally, at number 1 are the Green Children of Woolpit. Now in the 12th century, a brother and sister were found near a wolf pit in the village of Woolpit, Suffolk. Yes, they got the name of the village from the wolf pits in the village. Now they looked like normal human kids, except for the fact that their skin was heavily tinged with green. They spoke an unknown language that none of the locals had heard of, would only eat raw beans, and their clothing was just very bizarre. After a while they learned how to eat normal food and lost their green hue, but the boy soon died. died. The girl, however, learned how to speak English, and she explained how her brother and her had come from a place called St. Martin's Land, which was a subterranean world that only housed green people. She said the sun never shone there and it was twilight all the time. When asked how they got to Woolpit, she said she had no idea. She recalled herding her dad's cattle with her brother and then hearing a loud noise, and then they suddenly just end up near the wolf pit. The girl grew up and got married and led her life, but many people theorize the kids came from an alternate reality but just adapted to ours. For me personally, since it was the 12th century and travel was hard for locals of small villages, maybe the kids were from the Middle East or Asia, which could explain why the locals didn't recognize their language or clothing, but that still doesn't explain how they got there or the greenness of their skin, so maybe I should just stop talking. Starting us off with number 10 is the cold spot. According to a study published by the Royal Astronomical Society, there's a patch of cool space called the cold spot, which can be seen in the radiation produced by the Big Bang more than 13 billion years ago. It was first discovered by one of NASA's satellites in 2004 and then confirmed by ESA's Planck mission in 2013. The latest study actually ruled out the pre-existing explanation for this, which was that the cold spot was an optical illusion produced by a lack of intervening galaxies. One of the authors of the study said the cold spot could very well be caused by a collision between our universe and another bubble universe. Every bubble universe has its own laws of physics that could be similar to ours or completely different. So that ending statement still makes everything inconclusive, but it may be evidence. Coming in at number 9 is Deja Vu and Co. So pretty sure we've all experienced deja vu multiple times in our life, so I'm not gonna bother explaining it. But the Co part of the title was referring to other phenomenons. The first being deja vu, which means you instinctively know what's about to happen next, and the second being alter vu, which is when someone feels like their whole history has been altered somehow. So to make that clearer, when certain memories just aren't really meshing with reality, that's what alter vu is. And deja vu and deja vu are said to be memories bleeding into our reality from an alternate self. Alter vu, on the other hand, is meant to indicate being transferred to a completely new timeline and universe while still remembering things from your previous one. So next time you feel any of these things, just think twice and think very deeply about what's going on. At number 8 we have the Mandela effect. And now we have talked about the Mandela effect in another video, but if you haven't seen it, then I'll give you a quick recap. So the Mandela effect was formed by paranormal researcher Fiona Broom, who realized she remembered a huge historical event completely differently to everybody around her. She said she clearly remembered Nelson Mandela dying in prison in the 80s, when in real life, or at least this reality, he died in 2013 at home. She didn't understand this because she remembered his death so vividly. She voiced her doubts online and realized there were so many other people who shared the same memory as her, to the point they remember being taught about his death in the 80s in school. There's another example, like in Star Wars, most people remember Darth Vader saying, "Luke, I am your father." Me definitely included, but the actual line is, "No, I am your father." I feel like really hardcore fans will know that, but clearly I'm not. She then formulated the idea that this huge gap between reality could very well be because some people, and in this case the people who remember the 80s death, had somehow managed to splinter off and shift between parallel dimensions, but still kept in contact with, I guess, this dimension. Hence their memories of an old and different timeline doesn't always line up with our world, or our timeline, and that was coined the Mandela effect. The end. Filling our number 7 slot is eternal inflation. So this isn't a physical piece of evidence, but it's a significantly backed up scientific theory, so good luck to me trying to explain this. So let's start at the start. The Big Bang was an event that created our universe when it expanded outwards faster than the speed of light, and that process is called inflation. I honestly feel like Bill Nye the Science Guy right now. So according to cosmologist Alexander Vilenkin, some areas of space-time stop inflating but others keep expanding. In that regard, the Big Bang stopped expanding all of a sudden for our universe, but according to the theory of inflationary multiverse, it kept expanding into multiple parallel universes, creating more and more infinite realities, and we just happen to be one of them. If they do exist, they're a bubble universe probably right next to us or even overlapping with us. Now at number 6 is the case of Lerina Garcia. Now this Spanish woman woke up in her Madrid apartment one day and was hit with the realization that something was very, very wrong. She didn't recognize the bed sheets she had just woken up on, some items from her apartment were missing, whereas there were some items she had never ever even seen before. But the worst part was her boyfriend. She just couldn't find him anymore. She then tried to look for his number in her phone, couldn't find it. She asked her friends about him, none of them knew who she was talking about. She then reported him missing to the police, and they told her there was no records of that person even existing. A psychiatrist offered that perhaps Lerina was hallucinating due to stress, but she vehemently disagreed. She wasn't stressed, something was wrong. She went to visit her family and spoke about her sister's surgery that had happened a few months prior, and her parents and sister had no recollection of that event. Even when she went to work, everything was anarchy. She now worked for the same company, but in a different department in a different part of the world. She told her boss she was ill and went home even though she had to figure out who her boss was, yet the boss seemed to know her pretty well, yet she didn't know him at all. She's never been declared mentally ill, and she's not a drinker or a drug user, but she thoroughly believes that she slipped into another universe, only a bit different from her own universe, but now she can just never get back there, because she doesn't even know how she got to this one to begin with. Coming at number 5 are ghosts. Now I know ghosts are almost always exclusively linked to the dead, and that ghosts are known to just be dead people haunting us or their spirits, but that's actually never been proven. We keep looking towards science for the answers, but the answer may be a lot simpler than we think. People have offered that ghosts are actually living beings from a parallel universe. They could very easily be visions through breaches between planes and into alternate realities that exist in unison with ours. That's why we can never see ghosts that well. They're always just mirages. They could just be real people that are flickering into our world from theirs, and we could very well be doing the same in their world. For all I know, I could be appearing as a vision over there right now, but some little kid probably is shitting himself thinking I'm a ghost. Another explanation for ghosts could be that they're humans that live with us but exist in a totally different realm or timeline, hence they're never fully here and we can't observe them properly with our senses. But maybe they can with theirs. I would take that explanation over them being evidence of the afterlife any day, because it's just a lot less scary and I can sleep better at night that way. At number 4 is ancient light. Caltech cosmologist Ranga Ramchari found evidence of cosmic bruising, which he thinks is evidence of a parallel universe. Cosmic bruising basically means one universe bumping against another universe. In his study published in the Astrophysical Journal, he said cosmic bruising may explain an anomaly in a cosmic microwave background produced using data from ESA's Planck Observatory. When he compared the map created to a map of the night sky, he found this unexplainable blob of bright light. The cosmic background shows bursts of ancient light displaying radiation signatures from just a few 100,000 years after the Big Bang. And I know that seems like a long time, but in the bigger picture it's probably like a minute. Ancient light is the result of the recombinations of electrons and protons that initially teamed up to make hydrogen. And hydrogen only gives off a limited range of visible light, so all astronomers know which colors they should be and which colors they shouldn't be. And the blob he found on the map wasn't the color it should have been, and he posited that our universe may have just simply been a region within another eternally inflating superregion. That's nice.
Alright, this next one is pretty trippy. It has to do with some bizarre behavior seen in electrons. There's a famous physics experiment called the double slit experiment. Scientists shoot tiny particles, electrons, through 2 slits in a barrier, and the expectation is that you'll see this wave-like pattern on a screen behind it. But when scientists actually watch as these electrons go through the slits, suddenly the pattern on the screen changes. It's not wave-like anymore. The electrons end up behaving more like particles. So why does this happen? We're still not sure, but some people cite this as possible evidence that we might be living in a simulation. Maybe the so-called program running our simulated world conserves resources and only shows us certain things when we're actually paying attention to them.
You know the classic children's tale of Goldilocks, where she's always looking for the thing that's not too hot, not too cold, but just right? I swear I'm not going crazy, this is just the best way to describe the position of our planet Earth. Scientists have dubbed our place in the universe as the Goldilocks zone, where we are the perfect distance away from our sun so that it's not too hot where humans wouldn't be able to live, and it's not too cold where all our water is frozen, and so are we. Here's where the simulation twist comes in. How likely is it that we were placed here just because we had a stroke of good luck? If you were designing a reality, you would of course want to put your characters in a place where they are the most likely to survive. That doesn't mean that you still don't do crazy stuff like take the ladder out of the pool or conveniently forget to put doors in the house, but it's just a way to give the characters a baseline to thrive.
Here's a bit of a different take on this whole thing, but still very valid. Our perception of reality is just flawed. In a way, we're all kind of living in our own little simulations, interpreting all the information that's thrown at us with our own flawed human senses and emotions. We all kind of live in our own world, don't we? Our perception of reality is based on our past memories and experiences, our upbringing, our own personal abilities to interpret information. It's based on all kinds of things, and sometimes our perception ends up lining up with other people's, but in all kinds of other ways it doesn't. Just ask your ex who said what to who. This is why eyewitness testimony is often one of the least credible types of evidence in court, and even when it comes to stuff that's right in front of us, we never really all agree. Remember the dress that was clearly white and gold? Actually, did you think it was white and gold or blue and black?
It's blue and black.
Blue? Really?
Yeah.
Oh my god. Chris? Damn, alright, so I'm the only one in the room, damn. Alright, I thought it was white and gold. That's what I think. For some reason though, other people say blue and black. In reality though, it's pretty much split down the middle. If you ask most people, it'll be pretty 50-50, and that's kinda nuts. So if something as simple as a photograph like that can be this divisive, not hard to imagine why it's so tough to wrap our heads around reality itself.
Also, that will be James' last video. I will not have any white and gold truthers over here. Imagine a team of scientists that come together with powerful computers and a ton of curiosity, and they all start to recreate the entire universe, but in digital form. Well, that actually happened in 2014. The brilliant people at the Harvard-Smithsonian Center for Astrophysics pulled off a mind-bending feat when they linked up 8,000 computers to create a huge simulation of our universe that stretched 350 million light years across. They didn't stop here, but they ended up hitting fast forward and aging the universe 13 billion years, I guess, just to see what awaits us. They could basically see the entire universe from the Big Bang to the present day all on a computer screen. This all goes to show that not only are we interested in creating simulations, but we're also pretty good at them, and we're only getting better. And if we can create our own simulations, what's to say that we aren't living in a super advanced civilization's simulation? And hey, if you need further proof that we're suckers for simulations, just look at the wildly popular video game franchise, The Sims. With over 125 million copies sold in its first decade alone, it's clear that we humans have a knack for playing with virtual worlds. So when you think about it, if future generations of humanity have the chops to whip up even more realistic simulations, it wouldn't be a shocker if they decided to dive headfirst into the digital sandbox of existence. Who knows? Maybe we're just characters in someone else's video game. Cue the existential crisis.